Oh, here we go again. You got nothing on me, you Naruto Sasuke looking ass motherfucker. Hello everybody and welcome to Swords of Legends Online, and welcome to this beginner's PvE guide for the Bard. So this Bard is currently level 19 and we are in the DPS spec, which is known as Dissonance, and we are going to go ahead and walk through the skills we're going to be using and how to use them, and then we're going to do the dungeon. So I like to go with the build that uses double brightness. This basically changes my skills from that watery frost look over to that fire look. It also makes it so I stun and do a little bit more damage, whereas the frost one slows and does a little bit less damage. It's kind of a preference thing, but for this we're going to be using double brightness, and then I like to use Spell of Transience, which adds an additional blast to my wildfire, which is our main spam spell we're going to be using most of the time. Alright, so now that that's out of the way, what is Bard, like, what does the Bard do, and, like, what's it look like? So our main spell is Wildfire, and basically, we're going to be channeling it, and as we channel it, we're going to shoot 4 or 5 times, depending, or 3 or 4 times, depending on whether you have Spell of Transience or not. For us, it'll be 4. At the end of every full channel of Transience, we are going to get one of this top bar here, and this top bar is known as Accelerate. Accelerate is important because for every stack of Accelerate we have, it reduces the cast time of Conflagration. 2 stacks of Accelerate means a free instant, or I don't know if it's free, but at least an instant cast Conflagration. So most of our DPS is going to be 2 Wildfires into a Conflagration. Now, sometimes I will build it up to 4, the quickness, so I can double Conflagrate. I do this because I feel like when I inevitably transition over to PvP, sorry, I was making sure I was recording. When I inevitably transition over to PvP, having double Conflagrate is going to be way more useful than just using it once every few seconds. I'd rather use it twice every 2 seconds. Or twice, because that's a bigger burst. That's how PvP works. Don't worry about it. Alright. So, as I said, 2 Wildfires into a Conflagrate. However, there is one more spell we are going to preface. When we very first pull, we're not actually going to open with either Wildfire or Conflagrate. We're going to open with Fire Song. Fire Song reduces the target's movement and increases the damage of our Conflagrate by 20% for 30 seconds. So we open up with it, and immediately they're going slower. They're going to get to us. It's going to take more time for them to get to us. And whenever we inevitably use our Conflagrations, they're going to do more damage. However, you'll notice we don't just have quickness, these top 5 little squares here. We also have these things down here. These are known as notes. There's 2 different types of notes, but at this level and being a beginner, don't worry too much about that. Just know that you can have 3 types of each note, and at this level, you'll only accumulate 1 type of the note. For example, mine are red. However, if you are running Hoarfrost City instead of double brightness, yours will be blue. That is the difference between, as you can see, red here, known as Flame Bite, whereas the, or they're not known as Flame Bite. What are they called? Apologies, I forget off the top of my head. I think this will tell us, actually. Yeah, Fa and So. So, the red ones are Fa, the blue ones are So. Alright, so what does all that mean? Every time we use Conflagrate, it's going to give us 1 note. Once we reach 3 notes, which we can use the skill at any, but 3 is the most powerful, and it's a very strong skill. So we're gonna be getting 3 notes. Once we get 3 notes, we'll use Note Melody, which unfortunately has a pretty long cooldown, so we won't use it every 3 notes, but we're gonna be using it as often as possible. And what Note Medley does is it explodes for a ton of damage, the more damage depending on how many notes you have. And we're going to be using that as much as we possibly can, but preferably when things have high health. If you use it on low health targets, you're kind of wasting it, and if you go into the next pull with this on cooldown and then you can't use it on high health targets, it's kind of a waste. But we're not going to worry about that. Let's take these chaotic thoughts and put them into practice. So as I said, we'll go ahead, we're gonna open with the fire song, and then we are going to use 2 wildfires into a conflagrate. 2 wildfires into a conflagrate. 2 wildfires into a conflagrate. Now, I already had 2, and I intentionally did 3 regardless, because you'll probably only have like 0 when you first pull, so I went ahead and did 3. Now, we'll go ahead and use that note medley. Boom, massive damage. And then we're gonna go back into right what we were doing. 2 wildfires, conflagrate. 2 wildfires, conflagrate. 2 wildfires. However, now you'll note I don't have, I have 3 notes, but note medley is on cooldown, and that's gonna happen. So, as a bard, a DPS bard, Dissonance, your 2 AoE spells, whenever you do these kinds of pulls, are going to be conflagrate and note medley. As far as I'm aware, the final blast of wildfire does not AoE. I've been checking to see if it does, because this game actually doesn't do a great job telling you if something is AoEing or not. It kind of drives me nuts a little bit, to be honest. Like, let's see. Yeah, see, there's no extra damage numbers, which makes me think it's not AoEing. However, conflagrate, boom, do you see all the extra ones pop up? Conflagrate definitely AoEs. And then I'll go ahead and use note medley. Watch the amount of numbers that pop up. Oh, it died. Let's try that again. Yeah, see, it hit 2 of those 3 targets for over 1,000 damage, and that's why we always want to make sure we have 3 notes when we go to use it, and on preferably high health targets, because it's pretty simple. If you think about it, if you use your, note medley on targets with low health, but it hits for 1,000, think about how much of that damage isn't being used. Like, it's kind of crazy. Also, for these videos, I've discovered the best thing I can do is put Yilang here on healing. Because if you bring her, and I'm sure a lot of you have noticed this if you've been playing the game for very long, if you bring her, she does so much damage. So for the sake of the videos and teaching you guys, I am 100% keeping her on healing, so that way I can actually demonstrate using the DPS skills. And as you can see, I'm going back to my old habit of getting 4 of these, 4 accelerations and then double conflagration. If you guys prefer that, as far as I'm aware, there's 0 DPS loss in doing it, but it is kind of a good habit to have for PvP. I guess while we're doing a couple of pulls here, I can explain why, just so you guys can, for them of you that might be new to PvP, can understand why double conflagrate would be better than a single conflagrate. So, in DPS, usually, or in DPS, wow. In PvP, usually you're gonna have 2 DPS and a healer, right? So, it doesn't really matter how high your DPS is. And the reason it doesn't matter is because the game is designed in a way that a healer can out-heal a rotation, right? Most kills are gonna happen during very burst moments, when a huge amount of damage happens in a very quick amount of time, right? So that way the healer just doesn't have the time to heal the amount of damage that's coming in. But if you're just doing your basic rotation, you might do high DPS over a long period of time, but the healer's going to be able to heal that. What you want to do is do a ridiculous amount of DPS in a very short amount of time, because that's how you secure kills. And I know you guys didn't come here for PvP advice, but considering there's no DPS loss in doing it, and it does kind of get you ready for PvP, right? Like you're already in the habit of it, I would highly recommend just kind of getting used to it. Just build 4, double tap. Something that I did see another bard doing, and I feel like it's something that a lot of newer players to MMOs are going to do, or honestly, if you're just used to having a global cooldown, you'll probably do it. This game doesn't have a global cooldown, so just so you know, when you go to like double tap conflagrate, for example, don't wait. Like watch, boom, boom. I put a brief pause between it, because I have noticed if you hit it exceptionally fast, the game doesn't pick it up. And it's not because of a global cooldown or anything. I think it might just be kind of like a double tap protection in case you didn't mean to double tap it. Also, you'll note that I haven't used note melody a lot. That's actually a bad habit. Do not do that. You want to keep note melody on cooldown. Unless, of course, like I said, the target's basically already dead, in which case using your note medley is really pointless. There's no point to do that. The reason I don't use it is, once again, I have a PvP mentality. I want to save note medley for when my teammate says, go. And then my note medley goes off, right? Then it hits for the 1,000 fucking damage. Because he's going to do his go, and then that huge burst damage is going to kill somebody regardless of a healer being present or not. At least that's the plan. It never works out that way, right? Because your enemy players are going to have things like defensives and whatnot. Also, in my first video, which I'm probably going to redo, I'm not a big fan of it, but in my first video, I kind of harped on casters in this game. And I said they felt clunky. And after playing Bard for as long as I have, I completely take back everything I said. Casters in this game do not feel clunky at all. They actually feel really freaking good. And I think I just didn't give them a fair chance. So hopefully no one picked a main and used my video as a way to do that, because they might have been swayed against going caster. So here is a example of something you need to do as a bard that I haven't mentioned yet. Make sure you always keep your spell force up. I haven't been doing it between pulls, but if you're in a group and mobs are going to have more health and the fights are going to last longer, especially before bosses, because they last forever, make sure you get your spell force to max before pulling. Honestly, if your group is new and they don't seem to be aware or helping you or letting you get your spell force up, say something in chat. Be polite. Just say, hey, let me get my spell force up. And the reason is you don't get any back. As soon as the fight starts, when you're out, you're out. So it's designed that way, right? So don't get me wrong. It's not like a huge crippling thing. But if you start with half, you're going to have a bad time. So what we're going to do here, because it's a boss and we already have 3 notes, I'm just going to open with note medley, immediately hit him with the fire song, and then go back to doing what I like to do. 4 wildfires, tap, tap. Now, on the second set of wildfires, I am going to double tap this time because note medley's on cooldown. However, if note medley is off cooldown, try not to overuse your notes. Like, see how I have 3 and I can use note medley? I'm going to go ahead and use note medley, then double tap, because look, now I'm back up to 2 notes. Honestly, though, it is kind of a weird habit, because now that I think about it, it's already on cooldown again. So I guess it's not a huge thing, but if later on in my bard life I get some skills that require notes besides, that was close, besides my note medley, being able to build those, have those extra notes is going to be nice, right? You never want to overstack a resource if you can get away with it. You're going to some though, right? Like, don't beat yourself up if you do. It's just kind of like an optimization thing. Sha, sha, sha. So sha would be die in Chinese. Interesting. I'm trying to think of other things. Oh, I just realized. That's where I'm thinking of Sha. Mista Pandaria. Right? The Sha of laughter. The Sha of blah, blah, blah. That's why they named it that. I see. That makes sense. Oh, Nightmare Villager. These stun you and knock you back. Also, take a look at the boss's HP. Then take a look at my spell force. Alright, we're down to 200. Imagine if I started this fight. I'm gonna get hit. If I started this fight was less than full. So whenever you run out of spell force, let's talk about that. When you run out of spell force, you're actually not completely useless, but your DPS does go down quite significantly. Because the only skill that's using spell force is conflagration. But conflagration is not only a massive DPS skill, it's also giving you notes. And as you can see, we got one more conflag and we're out. So now, all we can do is wildfire. Of course, if you're in a group, this isn't a huge deal because the boss is already almost dead, right? And my assumption, without fully knowing, would be that because we run out of spell force in the duration of a boss fight, my assumption is that we do significantly more DPS than the melees, or maybe not significantly more, but in order for this to be worth it, surely we do more, right? So our whole goal is to get the boss to a really low HP quickly and have the melee finish them off, is essentially how you can look at it. I'm not a spell force, I should use some note medley. Of course, to be fair, later on, we very well might get a spell force recovery ability, which would be really nice, but I don't know that for certain, so you can't take my word for it. Alright, let's go grab these quest items, and then we will sit down and refill our spell force. Nothing feels worse than, oh no, we need to go back, actually. I'm glad this quest thing's here, because I think that's telling me that I missed one, right? Oh, how do I look and see? One of these has to have it, right? Yeah, look, I missed a couple. Oof. I'm glad I looked. The first time I did this dungeon, I had to do it twice. And I didn't, because I didn't realize that I had missed some. But this time, big brain. I'll edit this part out. The funny part is I did go ahead and edit that out, but I didn't miss any. I was looking at the wrong map. But anyway, yeah, no, I'm glad I didn't miss any. I will say one of the things that I kind of wish they would do in these dungeons is have a quicker way to get about. Because, like, whenever you do forget a quest item, for example, or you do need to go pretty far back in the dungeon, you can't even sprint in these. Like, look at this. I'm double tapping. Like, I really think they should give you the ability to sprint. Or at least something, right? Whether maybe you can teleport to the instance respawn points whenever you're in dungeons. Just something. Because right now, navigating them, especially when you forget stuff, it's a long process. So this is where I think the Bard, at least at level 19, starts to, I wouldn't say fall short, but it feels lacking. Is yes, we AoE, but we have to build up to AoE, right? So like every time there's a situation like this, it feels very, very lacking. However, once you get that note melody off though, like real talk, you do some massive damage, don't get me wrong. But then you're kind of back to being mediocre at AoE. I think a lot of spellcasters and a lot of games kind of suffer from that. So I don't think it's exclusive to this game or anything. And you actually do, like I said, you do AoE. It's just everything's a build-up. There is no just like constant cleave. That's where the melee really come in this game, because the melees, pretty much everything they're doing is cleaving everything near them, which is really fun, actually. I love that it's like that. But as many targets as there were, you've seen how I killed them one at a time, essentially. They all were getting slowly killed, but if you didn't notice, 1 died, and then 2 died, and then 3 died. Very slow process. Alright, so before we go get that quest item, we're going to sit down and get Spell Force. Because remember, this bar is really important. In fact, if you're just sitting down here at the bottom of the screen, I would recommend, at least until you remember, move it up where mine's at. I like mine here, just period. But regardless, if yours is down here and you're having trouble remembering, move that shit up. Alright. Back to my slow kill of these AoE situations. I think if later on I get a talent or something that makes it so Note Medley doesn't have such a long cooldown, I think it's going to be a lot funner to AoE. Or just maybe an ability to AoE, honestly. So, I guess with this free time that we have, I can kind of go over what your two different note types are. You got the red ones, which is the ones I'm using, which I forget the name of. What are they? Zoo or Saw or something like that. You can read the tooltips if you really want to know. The reason I'm not focusing on it is because this is, it's intentionally supposed to be simple. Like, that's why it's a beginner's, you know, basics PvE guide. However, when it comes to note medley, what's happening is, depending on how many red ones you have, it increases the damage. Depending on how many blue ones you have, it increases the size, like how big the AoE is. So eventually, regardless if you pick the red or blue talent, I'm assuming you'll eventually be able to get both. And then, you know, you can increase the size of it and the damage of it significantly. Also, did you just see my note medley hit the wall? That feels bad, man. There we go. Alright, did we get the quest item? We did get the quest item. Let's see if we can... No, we can't. I was going to see if we could squeeze by him without pulling him, but that ain't going to happen. However, take a look. Spell Force. Don't forget, Spell Force, very important. Oh man, one of these days, because I'm recording with OBS, one of these days I'm scared I'm going to end up streaming instead of recording. Because the buttons are right next to each other. And I feel like it's something you could very easily do. So, that was a situation where I didn't use Note Medley purely because there was one target. Like, if there were multiple targets, I would have used it, but there just being one, I didn't. And the only reason I get stingy like that is because of the cooldown. If it had less of a cooldown, I'd be so much more, like, liberal with using it constantly. Like, fuck it, we'll use it here, though. Followed by 2 of the conflagrations. Alright, we did a really big skip there. We're about to head into the final boss, and I realized this whole dungeon, I've kind of let one of my bad habits show up. Now, if you do what I said, you should be fine. But I happened to just notice that I'm not keeping Fire Song on cooldown either. Again, keep that shit on cooldown. Same with Note Melody. I can't use Note Melody right now, though. Wait, can you use Note Melody with no notes? I just learned something new. You can still use Note Medley and Fire Song without Spell Force. Wow. Alright, apologies, but then again, beginner's guide for a reason, right guys? We're learning together. So yeah, I mean, most of your DPS sticks around when you run out of Spell Force. Oh gosh. I hate moments like this as a caster, by the way. Or did we get lucky? Okay, we got lucky. Because they chain pull, and when they chain pull, I can't get Spell Force back. Surely that's going to be a thing that comes, like, back to us, or we get a skill or something that gives it back. Surely. Alright, now that we're not being a fool, let's do this final boss, and we're going to do everything as correct as we possibly can. We're going to make sure Fire Song is on cooldown, Note Medley is on cooldown, and we're going to fuck this guy up. We already got 3 notes, so you know what we're going to open with? Note Medley. Let's go. Note Medley, Fire Song. Immediately start casting Wildfire. Let's get up to 4 stacks. Double Explosive, back up to 4 stacks. Double Explosive. However, Fire Song's off cooldown this time, so Fire Song, Double Explosive. Always Fire Song first before the explosives because it does buff the explosive damage. Note Medley's off cooldown. There we go. It's like we're doing so much more damage. Now that I'm not being a fool. Fire Song's off cooldown. Fire Song Double Explosion. This time we're going to get 4 stacks, and then we're going to use Note Medley because it'll be off cooldown. And then we're going to double explode. Oh, only one of them went off. Let's do that again. Fire Song, double explosion. Yeah, you can tell I'm doing more damage because... Well, I take that back. For a second, I thought the boss was getting low on health. He is not. However, it's an undeniable fact I'm doing more damage because Fire Song doesn't cost Spell Force, so the damage from Fire Song alone is going to be more damage. But Fire Song also increases the damage of Conflagrate, so imagine where his health would be if I wasn't doing those things. Nope. Try not to ever hard cast Conflagrate. If you do, it's not the end of the world, but avoid it as much as possible. So we're officially out of Spell Force. So now we're using our 3 abilities that aren't Conflagrate. We're going to continue to use Wildfire, use Fire Song as much as possible, and Note Medley does not require notes, which is weird to me, but it is what it is, and I'm not complaining because it gives us more to use whenever we run out of Spell Force. We're fine, we're fine, we're fine. I usually do these with my ally on DPS. And honestly, if you're doing these by yourself, if you really want to practice your DPS rotation, definitely put them on healer. But even if you're a DPS, coming in here with your partner on DPS, or the companion rather, it's totally worth it. You get through these dungeons so fast. Whereas whenever you do them with them set to healer, you can see it takes a while, and you just run out of Spell Force before the boss dies. Of course, look at the practice I'm getting on my rotation, right? So don't forget that. I'm kind of surprised they have Yi Long hold aggro whenever she's healing and just standing there, because she's not doing much damage. Oh, here we go again. You got nothing on me, you Naruto Sasuke looking ass motherfucker. He's almost down. He's almost down. You better drop fat loot, that's all I'm saying. What, is he out of range, really? That's another thing that's difficult to check in this game, or it's hard to realize. I mean, over time you'll start to get used to it, but range checking, sometimes I don't know if I'm in range or if there's another problem as to why I'm not casting. Should be dead. Get out of here, kid. Alright, boys. First off, level 20. But second off, let's see if it dropped that fat loot. Oh. Forgot I had to channel it. I was just pressing F and then going to the other one, hoping they'd both pop open. Did we get any fat loot? Oh, we did. What is that, a cape? Chest piece? Oh, leg wear. Well, first off, let's identify it. What do we get? What do we get? What do we get? Better everything. Fuck yeah. All right, give me a weapon. Give me a weapon. What are they loots? What? Stringed instrument. Give me a better stringed instrument. It just says string instrument. Aw, no loot. Alright guys, well this was the PvE beginner guide for Bard. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Also subscribe.